he is one of those leaders who had an impact on making the whole world and Europe unified in the support to Ukraine. So he was definitely one of those leaders.
At the start of the invasion, it must have felt very lonely and bleak. I wonder, how important was it for you and your country, but you personally, to have Boris Johnson's support?
He surely, from the very beginning, he was on our side. I've never seen any hesitations or doubts in our conversations and his support to Ukrainians. He always said that it's the people of UK who's supporting us. So he tried to support us not only with calls and words, but with deeds. I remember there were moments, and frankly speaking, we had moments then when we needed weapons and UK didn't have these weapons. So he helped by pressing or by talking to politically to other countries to speed up the supply of weapons for Ukraine, and he did that. So he is one of those leaders who had an impact on making the whole world and Europe unified in the support to Ukraine. So he was definitely one of those leaders.
How concerned are you at the moment that the public in the West is experiencing war fatigue, particularly in the wake of soaring energy prices and blaming the sanctions regime? And if I may, following on from that, are you worried that Russia is trying to weaponize the energy crisis to try and weaken the resolve of the Western leaders?
Перетворити енергетичну кризу на зброю для того, щоб зменшити рішучість західних лідерів.
Знаєте, у мене немає сил.
Well, let's say I have no strength and time to be afraid that the world society might have a fatigue because of the war. There are risks like that, but I believe that the global society should be afraid of this fatigue. They should be afraid that Ukrainians would be weaker, that we will not be able to stand strong, because Russia would definitely continue. They would go to Poland, to the Baltic countries, and they have to analyze what would happen when Russians will go to Baltic countries and attempt to occupy those countries. And this will happen. What would NATO countries do? They would start a war. They would start sending their own soldiers and military, or what they would do if there would be shellings at the borders with Poland. What the countries would do. There would be graver risks. There would be like a full-fledged war on the European continent. And considering we're talking about NATO countries, we're talking about a global war. So in today's situation, the resistance, the resilience of Ukraine, it's important for the world. You can't compare that with the energy crisis in the world, with this deficit, with this blackmail of Russia. You shouldn't compare this, because you have to realize what would happen. And we've talked about preventive sanctions before the start of the large-scale aggression, when we were saying, let's do something now, because you will inevitably impose those sanctions. And because they might be afraid of having large-scale aggression, but we were not heard of. Now, if we're losing the sanctions policy, everyone would see different risks. I believe that there's no room for risks, for taking a risk like that, or a risk of a global war. No one can afford themselves to do so.